Hi guys! So in today's video, I'm going to be walking you through my August reads and also going to show you my September TBR. I know these videos are usually done separately, but because I'm in the beginning of being a booktuber, I decided to take a bit of a pressure off and do them compiled, just unite them. Because let's be honest, if I decide to do them in the traditional way, I'm not going to be posting them in time, and you're probably going to get my September TBR in October, so that's not fun. Okay, so August was a really good reading month. I had a bunch of 5-star reads, especially in the comic book section. It was chef's kiss. I've read 7 books, 1 comic book, but at the time of making this video, August is not over yet, and I think I can pull through and actually finish an 8th book.
Wow.
Like have 8 books in total. But even if I finish it on like September 3rd or September 4th, I'm gonna put it as if I finished it in August, because most of the book I've read in August, so it seems right for me to do that. So yeah, I'm gonna pretend I've almost finished it, even though I haven't. I'm gonna tell you a bit what I think about the book that I'm currently reading. But yeah, it's 7 books done and in the middle of the 8th. Hopefully I'm gonna get through it. But either way, we're gonna pretend that I've read it in August, because hoo-wee. So the first book that I've read in the month of August was The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Eva Lavender by Leslie Walton. It was a good book. I had some sort of expectations of it. I've heard it from a lot of booktubers. Usually, I don't want to sound pretentious at all, because I'm not. I've just started being an active reader like in 2020. So I cannot say like I only read the creme de la creme. To be frank with you, I really like the cover of the book, and I've heard amazing things from other booktubers before I started booktube, and I was like, why not try to read it? And I know I'm fiddling a lot with my hair, but I don't know what's going on.
My heart's on a jelly and I'm googly-eyed.
So let's get back on track. So I had high hopes for it. The story, if you don't know what's going on in the book, it's the story of obviously Eva Lavender and her strange and beautiful sorrows. Wow, what a twist.
What a twist!
The thing that I liked the most about the book was that from the get-go, Eva, who's the narrator of the story, tells you that in order for the reader to understand her story properly, you have to first read the story of her great-grandmother, grandmother, and mother. And the fact that I learned so much about her family and went through the ages and decades, and every single decade had its specific feeling to it, and it felt defined, and you can feel like when you were in the 40s, when you were in the 60s, when you were in the, I don't know what period you were, because I forget. But I liked the fact that it was quite unique, the writing style, and it made me feel a lot closer to the main character, which I really like, because it's good when you feel a certain type of way towards a character. And yeah, I really enjoyed the fact that I got to see the similarities between all the women in the Lavender family. And another thing that I really enjoyed in the book was the ending. It wasn't the best ending. It wasn't like I was super emotional, but it was quite satisfying to the book to conclude the book. And yeah, it was a pretty good book. I gave it, let me see, 3 stars, which I know it's confusing when you rate from 1 to 5 stars because it's a very small range, but for me, 3 stars, it's a good book. Like, I would recommend it to someone. It's not the type of book that I would reread or anything, but I had a pretty good time reading it. I'm not disappointed. I don't feel like I've wasted my time reading it. And it was a pretty good book. If you want to give it a go, you can. And actually, it's a tiny book. It's like 200 pages. I've read it in a day, which for me, it's very good. And yeah, very good. The next book that I've read this month, and I'm very excited that I did, was Coraline by Neil Gaiman. And I don't know if you know this about me, but I freaking love Neil Gaiman. He has the potential to be one of my favorite writers. I've read The Ocean at the End of the Lane, which blew me away. It's one of my favorite books. It's not a short story, it's a novel. One of my favorite books that I've read ever. To be frank with y'all, it has the best ending that I've ever read in my entire life. It's beautiful. Then after I finished The Ocean at the End of the Lane, I was in a Neil Gaiman rush and I wanted to read something else. And I went on Google, as one does, and I heard about American Gods, which I only knew that it was a TV show, and I was like, whoa, this is great. And I tried to read it and I DNF'd it after 150 pages. I'm gonna try to read it once more. I'm gonna give it another go because it's Neil freaking Gaiman. But I'm not making any promises because I don't know if I'm gonna like it. And yeah, so after I DNF'd American Gods, I didn't want to give up on Neil Gaiman, so I tried Coraline. And I gave it 5 stars because I really enjoyed the story. It was beautiful. I saw the movie when I was younger and it made me very, very scared. I was absolutely terrified. And this is no exaggeration. I had nightmares because of Coraline. And I just saw it that one time. I couldn't bear to watch it again. And now because I forgot what the plot was, I just remembered the lady with the buttons, black buttons as eyes. I said, why the hell not give it a go? And I really enjoyed it. The fact that I love most about Neil Gaiman, which I really do appreciate in Stephen King as well, is the fact that they really do know how to turn those childhood fears which we look upon now and think, oh, this was stupid, like being afraid of the dark or being afraid of a certain blanket that looks a bit of like has a human shape or anything of that sort, like childhood fears. They show us that they're actually very justifiable and they're still terrifying. And I really enjoy that exploration of childhood and childhood fears and growing up and facing your own battles and being so freaking brave since you're young. And I absolutely adored Coraline. And yeah, it made me cry. So if you don't know what Coraline is about, the story is this young girl named Coraline, obviously. She is a very brave, little adventurous girl, like just a little Indiana Jones type of girl who really enjoys exploring everywhere in nature, in her backyard, going through woods and all that jazz. And since she moved with her parents to a big brand new apartment, why am I having a brain freeze? Why am I buffering? And she really enjoys exploring her backyard and seeing the well and all the trees and all the stones and the black cat that she has around. But one day it's really foggy outside and she cannot go play outside, and her parents suggest, why not explore the house? Why not find every nook and cranny in the house and be a little indoor Indiana Jones? And she says yes, she's fine with it. And then she discovers this door that leads to the next door apartment, and then things go south. That's when the plot begins. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really had fun. It's a very short story. It's It's a book actually, it's not a short story. It's like 150-ish pages, I think. And I don't know, I really ate it up. Like Neil Gaiman's style of writing, it's just my type, and I like the issues and problems that he deals with, and the characters that he is able to create, and the atmosphere that he creates. And I really enjoy his stories, and I want to give Graveyard Book, the Graveyard Book and Stardust a go, but we'll see how it goes. So I gave it 5 stars, and hope you'll enjoy it as well if you want to read it, or if you're interested in Neil Gaiman. But I suggest you start with The Ocean at the End of the Lane, because that's a good way to go. So the next book that I've read this month, in the month of August, was Lock Every Door by Riley Sager, and I really enjoyed the book. It's a thriller. It's about this girl who is in dire need of a job, and she goes on Craigslist and she finds there an advertisement for a house sitter, which is enormously good paid. She has like a 50K salary a month or something like that, very outrageous, and she has to house sit one of the most famous buildings in New York called the Bartholomew. But she is a bit suspicious at first because it's too good to be true. But because of her situation, she decides to apply and actually gets hired, which is very good for her. But things don't go the way you think they would, obviously, because it's a thriller. It's not peachy, it's not all rainbows and sunshine. Let's talk about the things that I love about this book, and that was the atmosphere. I really enjoy books that have this gothic horror trope, this gothic environment to it, and the Bartholomew is essentially that. It has gargoyles on it. I mean, come on, how much more gothic can you get than that? And the other thing that I really enjoyed about this book was Riley Sager's type of writing suspense. Way of writing suspense is very good at it. It's a very suspenseful and page-turning book, and I enjoyed it up to after the halfway point, I think. I started losing interest. It was the ending that lost me. I really didn't enjoy the twist. It was very predictable. It was very outlandish, to be honest, and seemed like she's turned into sort of a superhero. But it was very good up to the ending part, which lost me 100%. But still, I enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars. So it was better than The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Eva Lavender. Because I really, really enjoyed the first part, where you're still in the unknown, where you're still trying to figure out what was going on, where you're still surrounded by this gothic and mysterious and eerie atmosphere, where you're intrigued and you're still interested in the book. But then the plot thickens, but it doesn't thicken at all, and by the end it lost me. I mean, thrillers usually disappoint me, which is sad to say. I want to read more thrillers because I want to find my ultimate favorite thriller of all time. But I still enjoyed it, even though it let me down at the end. I still would recommend this book. And yeah, if you want to read it, give it a go. Next book I've read, because as I said, enjoyed most of the book. I read another Riley Sager book, which was Home Before Dark, and I really liked it. It was way better than Lock Every Door. I even forgot the name of the book. But yeah, Home Before Dark, at first I was very hesitant because I was scared that it was gonna be the sort of your usual haunted house story, which is very predictable and boring now. There's like tens of thousands of movies and TV shows and books about it, and you don't get anything. It's everything. It's the same, all of them. And that was very scary because I didn't like the ending of Lock Every Door. And when I saw the premise of Home Before Dark, I was very scared because I thought it's gonna be just another haunted house story, but it wasn't. And he actually took was brave and made some amazing decisions in the book, and the ending was very satisfying in my opinion, and it closed the story perfectly. And even though some of the twists were a bit predictable and you kind of figure it out, it has so many twists that I got twisted. Like, I couldn't predict all of them. And yeah, the story is about a family that moves into this home in this big mansion in a chateau, and they're not from that town, and they do not know the story of this house, which is it's very infamous for the townspeople, and they do not find out all the details about the house until after they buy it, and they go through a lot of the same things that the other tenants went through. And it's very interesting because it's the story from the girl's perspective, the child of the family, a bunch of years after all the things occurred, like 20 years or ish, something like that. She's, I think, 5 or 6 years old when they moved into the house, and they stay there for 20 days or a month. And it's very interesting to see her perspective. She doesn't remember anything that had happened there, and it's very interesting to see how she deals with it now as an adult. And it's a beautiful story. It's a story about families and how different characters interact with each other and how they maintain a relationship, close relationships. And I don't know, I really enjoyed the book. I really enjoyed Riley Sager's type of writing, style of writing. He really knows how to write suspense. And from the get-go, you get hinted at a lot of things that might or might not have happened. And I don't know, I really enjoyed it, and I liked his take on the classic haunted house story. And yeah, I gave it 4 stars, so in my opinion it's a pretty good book, and I would actually really recommend this to you guys if you enjoy haunted house stories. This is a very not your usual, and I really like it. Plus it's suspenseful, what you want from a thriller with great characters. You kind of care about them, so that's good. So I'm gonna talk about the next book that I've read this month, and the next book that I've read this month was a classic, because I made this into a rule for 2020 that I wanted to read a classic every month, and this month I wanted to read The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. And I don't know why I thought this book was in the horror genre, and I had very different expectations from it, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. It was a fascinating read. It was nothing like I thought it would be. The story starts with this painter Basil and his friend Lord Henry talking about their day, and Basil tells him that he met someone whose beauty made him create a new form of art, a new form of painting, and he's incredibly inspired by this Dorian Gray, who became his absolute muse. And when hearing this, Lord Henry is very interested and wants to meet Dorian Gray in this instant, and he convinces Basil to set up a meeting, and the painter calls Lord Henry and tells him, yeah, I'm gonna paint this guy today, come here, watch him so you can meet him. And Lord Henry goes there and he's absolutely stunned by Dorian's beauty, but he sees even though he's so beautiful, he is quite naive, so he decides to change that. And while Dorian Gray's picture is being painted, Lord Henry talks with him and shares his opinion about the world and different topics, and Dorian Gray has a revelation in that moment. And then one of the most famous scenes in the book happens when the painting is finished and Dorian Gray sees his beautiful face and he starts weeping and says that it's not fair that the painting will forever be as beautiful as this day in June, and he will have to age and his face will have to go through every sorrow and disappointment and mistake that he will go through, and he's not going to be as beautiful as the painting, and that he wishes he could switch places with the painting so that painting will suffer his life and he wouldn't have to. Yeah. And I really love the book. The only thing that it's not necessarily a problem because it didn't feel draggy. It's not that I didn't enjoy it, but kind of put me off is that not a lot of things happen, in the sense that I'm used to high fantasy, so a lot of things happen there, and this one it didn't, but I still gave it 5 stars because I absolutely ravished I absolutely treasured the moments that Lord Henry discussed all sorts of matters with Dorian Gray. He talked about life and art and politics and intelligence and beauty and everything, and it was so intriguing to see Lord Henry's opinions, and he's such a smart character. I absolutely adored most of the things he said. I mean, keep in mind it's an old book, so there's gonna be a bit of sexism and whatnot, but despite that, it was absolutely intriguing to read their conversations, and I would have been fine with reading only their conversations. And it was just delightful to see their opinions and how they interacted with each other, how as time went on Dorian got smarter and smarter, and he was able to have these amazing retorts and carry the discussion and be his own person and be as smart or maybe even smarter than Lord Henry, and it was beautiful. I absolutely loved Oscar Wilde's characters, and he, in a very small book, it was less than 300 pages, he was able to create such complex and fascinating and enthralling characters and conversations, and with a very interesting plot, to be honest. Very interesting plot, even though nothing action-packed or plot twisty happens, because you kind of guess what's going on. It's still I mean, it's the picture of Dorian Gray. It's worth a read if you haven't already, like I had. But yeah, I gave it 5 stars. I definitely would like to reread this again when I'm older, like 5-10 years from now, so I can see how my opinions will change over time, because it's such a smart book and I want to reread it at certain points in my life so I can see how it will affect me then. So yeah, amazing book. So happy I read it. The next book that I've read this month was The Fires of Heaven, which is the 5th book in the Wheel of which is the 5th book in the Wheel of Time installment. And without giving you guys any spoilers, because it's pretty far in the series, I gave it 3.5 stars. I liked the book. It was It was a good book. Yeah, it's my least favorite of the series so far after Dragon Reborn. And the thing that I can say most that disappointed me the most was the fact that it felt a bit draggy, like a lot of things happened, but between the tension filled scenes there was a lot of time passing, and the scenes themselves were not that long either, and felt draggy, and it was a bit harder to get through. But I didn't have such big issues with the book itself as to say that it was such a bad book that I don't want to continue with the series, because I want to continue with the series. I'm very interested to see how it all pans out. But yeah, it was a good book. Some good things happened. And one other thing that I didn't like was that certain big things happened in this book, and I didn't have the reaction that I should have to them at the moment that they were taking place. Like, I was reading the action moment, I reacted to what had happened when the characters had time to process what had happened, and then it affected me. And I don't know if it was on my part that I should have reacted and I didn't, or if it was the writing style that put me off, but I found that to be a bit of a problem, because I should have had a huge reaction to what happened, and I didn't while it happened, only after. It's a bit confusing. If you've read the books or are currently reading them, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, but still, it wasn't such a bad book, even though it's my least favorite. So yeah, I'm gonna continue with the series, obviously. I'm now at page 500 in Lord of Chaos, which is the 6th book, obviously, in the Wheel of Time series. And I'm liking it so much better. As of now, it's a 4 to 4.5 stars book. I don't know exactly, because I don't know what's gonna happen, how it's gonna turn out, if the issues that I had with the last book are gonna appear in this one as well. But I'm gonna see. I have a pretty good feeling about this one. And yeah, I absolutely love the series, even if it has a bunch of bad apples in it. I really enjoy Wheel of Time, and I think I'm gonna absolutely adore it. It's probably going to be one of my favorite fantasy series that I've ever read, because, spoiler, I haven't read all that many series. And yeah, I just love it. And the last thing that I've actually read this month, in the month of August, is the comic book Hawkeye. I didn't actually want to read a story about Hawkeye. I didn't find him very interesting, and I know I'm very dumb. Now I know that I was incredibly dumb to say that, because I absolutely love him. And the story, it's him when he's not in the Avengers, when he's just at home chilling, and the situation that he finds himself in. And it's very, very intriguing. I really enjoyed reading about him and his practically day-to-day life, which is not normal. He's still a superhero, and he has a very bad self-esteem, which is weird to see from a superhero. And I really enjoyed the characters. It had one of my all-time favorite tropes, which is trainee type of thing, a type of relationship between two characters when they are bonded through this thing that they both love, which is, in this situation, archery. And Hawkeye teaches Kate Bishop, and they have this little cute type of friendship trainee relationship, and I absolutely adore that trope. It's so interesting to see how the relationship evolves through time, and how they get closer and they become best friends and whatnot. And another thing that I really enjoyed was the penciler, the way it was penciled and colored. The color choices were absolutely brilliant, and the way it was drawn in a very sort of minimalistic way was incredibly beautiful and elegant and very aesthetically pleasing to look at. And another thing that I really enjoyed about this comic book was the way the panels were arranged on every page. Incredibly creative. I haven't seen this type of page arranging ever. I've seen other creative ways, but this one has to be one of my favorites. It was beautiful, and it really told the story in such a beautiful way just through the panels. They were very interactive with the story and with the characters, and they were very tight-knit with the story, the panels. And this also, if you thought that the list of things that I loved ended there, no, it didn't. Another thing that I really enjoyed about this was 2 of the comic books were so unique. One of them, you start the comic and when they're talking in the speech bubbles, there's a bunch of lines and you understand, like, you see the word good, and then another person like replies to Hawkeye and there's these lines and says yes or something like that. And at first you don't know what the hell is going on, why the speech bubbles like that, and you don't understand why the speech bubbles are like that. And then you actually are revealed that you're from the dog's perspective, Hawkeye's dog, Pizza Dog, and you're following him through that issue. And it's incredibly fun and creative because you get to solve a murder with him. And what I like a lot about the story is that you get to see the story progress to a character's perspective, and then another character's perspective, and then another character's maybe perspective, and they always meet at a certain point, and it's so beautiful. It's so interesting to see all these little stories collide in that point. It's sort of CSI-like, CSI-like, but done good. I wish they would have done more numbers than 22. I think I would have freaking loved for it to have like 10,000 issues because I loved it. I would have enjoyed more of Hawkeye's story, which is something that I wouldn't actually think I would say. Like, yeah, but I really enjoyed it. I cried at the ending, per usual, and I gave it 5 stars because it deserves all the freaking stars in the whole world. And give it a go if you're a comic book fan and you haven't read it, and even if you're not a superhero fan, please give it a go. And I hope you guys had an amazing time watching this video. I definitely had a blast talking with you guys about the books that I've absolutely loved in August, and hope to see you next time. Bye!